Hello and thanks for joining me again. I want to do a very, very special poem for you now. When I first heard this poem, it totally blew my mind. That was many, many years ago, and my opinion of it hasn't changed at all, really. It's still, in my thinking, the greatest manipulation of the English language ever undertaken by anybody from any country. The poem is called The Raven, and it was written by Edgar Allan Poe, first published in the New York Evening Mirror in 1845, so it's going back quite a while. Poe was a very troubled individual, and with a lot of depression and alcohol abuse and all of those things, and it wasn't helped by the fact that his wife died very young, leaving him all alone. But he wrote some fascinating poetry thereafter, trying to, as it were, reconnect with her. And like Annabel Lee, for example, very famous American poem, and also this poem, The Raven. And the backstory or the setting of the poem is the author is sitting there in his very plush surrounds, nothing like Poe's real life, but this is the setting he gave this poem. Sitting there with all this grand statues and paintings and beautiful carpeted floor and all very grandiose. And he's sitting there, and it's around about midnight, and he's trying to find some solace or some peace from old books of stories and lore, poetry. And it's about midnight, and he's missing her so badly. And there he is, half dozing, half reading, and then he hears a tapping. And he investigated at the door, and there was nobody there. And eventually, cut a long story short, a bird comes in, a raven, and it went flutter, 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 and it perched on a bust, on a statue above his door. And he thought, oh, thank goodness, it's just a bird, and has flown in out of the woods. And so he starts talking to it, and the bird had a word. He used to utter this word, nevermore, every now and again. And he thought, oh, it's just a bird, it's nothing serious, nothing bizarre. But then he realized that the bird hadn't come in out of the night and out of the woods, but it has come in out of the other world. And once he realized that, he said, tell me, will I ever see her again? I beg you, tell me. Is she still there? Will we reconnect sometime? And this dialogue happens, and it's a fascinating piece. It's called The Raven. Here we go. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. That it is, and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I'd sought to borrow from my books surcease or sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the fair and radiant maiden that the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. That it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, or "Madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here, I opened wide the door. Darkness there, nothing more. Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the stillness was unbroken, and the darkness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what their at is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Open then I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not an instant stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. And this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, said I, art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marvelled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, yet its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore, for we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door with such name as nevermore. But the raven sitting lonely on that placid bust spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word it did outpour. Nothing further than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. But the bird said nevermore. Startled by the stillness broken, by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his song one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope one melancholy burden bore of nevermore, nevermore. And the raven still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door, and upon the velvet sinking I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining, with the lamplight gloating o'er. But whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then men thought the air grew denser, perfume from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch! I cried, thy God had lent thee, by these angels he had sent thee, respite, respite, and nepenthe from the memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget the lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted. Tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, by the heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aden it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word or sign of parting. Bird or fiend, I shrieked up starting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of the lie thou soul had spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit that bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still a sitting, on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow, which lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted nevermore. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Thanks for joining me. See you next week.